Alright, what is up guys, Zorga here, back from the dead to bring you a TCG deck profile for the deck that I ended up getting second with at Toronto BCS for standard, being Zorga Mask. So yeah, I brought this deck for standard and I'm getting second with this deck, and I guess we'll just go over I guess everything, right? Like the deck list, the card choices, and why I decided to bring the deck. So if my hands look a little awkward because my webcam it's like inverted upside down, so I'm holding my deck upside down right now. So yeah, so that's a little awkward. That's probably why. We're gonna be using the old playmat that I got from last year because apparently there were customs issues and they actually didn't have the playmats for us at the time. So yeah, we just use old one for now. But without further ado, let's get along with the deck profile. So red deck, grade 3 Zorga, the blue one, Husk, Rancor, and whatever starter. So I'd say this is pretty standard. Zorga obviously is going to be playing the Zorga ride line. Other decks steal this ride line because it's good. So there's obviously no reason why Zorga and stuff will not be playing it. So starter doesn't matter. I'll just choose your favorite one. My favorite one is Corfi, so that's why I play this one. Rancor, Husk, and then I personally play blue Zorga because I think the res effect is better than the red Zorga's. I think it's Soul Blast 1, ditch an order and grab an order and you can perform Alchemy Magic. I personally think the blue Zorga CB1 to res a card is actually a lot better than that effect. So that's why I play it, because having built the res lets you set up plays with Shadow Cloak that bounce it back to your hand. You can set up boosters, you can set up even just like a vanilla crit to put into soul, because the deck is very soul heavy. So yeah, so that's why I personally am on the blue Zorga over the red Zorga. So that's it for the ride line. As for the actual main deck, we'll go from top to bottom, I guess. So for Zorga Mask, no questions here, nothing special here. Zorga Mask is the thing you want to go into as fast as possible. This is a deck where you actually might consider even going first using the mask effect to mask up into the Zorga Mask, just because I think the biggest downside to playing blue Zorga over the red Zorga is that going first, your grade 3 turn is really bad because the blue Zorga doesn't give you power. The only way you're going to access power is using Clouded Miasma as your order for one that you automatically for that turn. But since that early in the game, you might not always have access to it. So this is a deck where you might actually consider going into the Zorga Mask, even going first with the mask order. But you want to hold off on it if possible for the Persona Ride turn, because you do want to actually get the Persona Ride power and the draw off of it, so you can actually go minus doing it. So yeah, so 4 of it, nothing really special about there. It's the main thing you want to go into. Obviously, you're going to play 4 of your basically your Persona Ride. We're playing one more blue Zorga in the actual main deck, and that is because Zorga Mask banish effect of banishing the old Zorgas is actually really good. And this deck actually has other ways mainly one other way to get to it, being the Forbidal, but you have Shadow Cloaks, which can get you to your Forbidal. So this card is really good because, or rather, this card itself is not very good, but because of how good Zorga Mask's banish effect is and how easy it is to get to the extra copy of the Zorga if you need to, makes playing the extra one really nice. Because if you don't know, Zorga Mask's banish effect is you remove a copy of another named Zorga to either call a unit back onto the board, or you add a normal order from drop back to hand. So either more orders Alchemy Magic with, or call a Shadow Cloak so you can, after Alchemy Magic, bounce them back to your hand. So that's why we play the 1. And then next off we play 4 of the Roaming Prison Dragon. So he's the main he's the main beater guy you want on your board at all times. You want ideally all 4 in rotations, but 2 is good enough. You just need a way to clear them off of the board so you can actually call them back out from the drop. But if you don't know what this thing's skill is when in the drop zone, when you perform Alchemy Magic or when you play an order, you can res it back from drop with its own skill, and then perform, and then you either give it 10k or you give it a crit, or if it's with Alchemy Magic, you get to do both. So big beater with a crit, very very nice, recurs itself. Play 4 of it. 5k body sucks, whatever, but this is still like the best beater this deck has. So yeah, that's it for the grade 3s. Grade 2s, we're playing 4 Shadow Cloaks. This is, in my opinion, the best card in the deck. So its first skill is on place from hand. If you can choose one order, so it can be a blitz or a normal order, and spoilers, we are playing blitz orders in this deck as well. You choose one order from the deck, and then if you do not have another copy of that order in your drop zone, you can mill it. So milling orders means you can alchemy magic with them, or you could use like blue Zorga or grab the orders back to your hand. So very good there. And its second effect is when you play an order, you can Soul Blast one to give it 5k. Then if it was part of alchemy magic, you can choose when you reverse back to your hand. So this card is very crucial to the strategy of like the main whole core strategy of this deck. How I like to play this deck is using res orders to loop back defensive options. So whether it be like 15 or 20k triggers like crits or fronts, your OT, PGs, all stuff like that. You can use res order to bring it back, and then use Shadow Cloak to bounce it back to your hand, so you have more defensive guard options. And yeah, so that is like the main way I like to play the deck. So obviously that's why I think Shadow Cloak is so good, because he's the guy that lets you actually loop your defensive options, as well as getting orders into your drop zone for consistency. So yeah, overall I think Shadow Cloak is the best card in the deck. This is the card you always want to open with, and that's why we're playing 4 of it. Next, we are playing 4 PGs. We are playing 4 regular PGs, or rather regular effect PGs, because this deck has a blitz order you want to be trying to use every single turn. So you do not want to randomly have a turn where you end up conflicting like the Elementaria with your other blitz orders. That's why we're on 4 regular PGs. Also, the fact that the regular PG is a unit you can bounce back with that Shadow Cloak, which is something you cannot do with the Elementaria. But another upside to the Elementaria, if you choose to play it, if you're not scared of having a conflict, is that you can mill it out with Shadow Cloak and use one of your orders to grab back to your hand. So trade-offs, depending which one you like. But I personally like playing 4 regular PGs. That's why I'm personally on 4 of these, and that's it for the actual units. Next up is our order lineup. So we're playing 3 of the Miasma, we're playing 2 Masques, and then for the 1-ups, we're playing 1 Forbidal, 1 of the Dry Check order, 1 of the mill, 1 of like the check top 3 mill order, 1 of the CC, and 1 of this. So these are our orders that we're actually alchemagicking with. So Miasma is CB1, choose a unit from drop zone and bring it back. If it was part of alchemy magic, you give your van, your front gets plus 5k for the turn. So buffs front row power, and you can bring something back to bounce back with the Shadow Cloak. So very good there. This is one of the orders you want to be alchemy magicking with pretty much every single turn. So that's why we're playing 3 of it, because obviously when you alchemy magic, they get banished. So yeah, that's why we're playing 3 of these. 2 Mask. We're only really playing it because it's a mask deck, and you kind of need to play masks to mask up. So yeah, 2 of that. You play 2 just in case because you want to damage the 1. And then all our 1-up orders. Actually, it does matter that we're playing a bunch of different name orders for the Blitz order, which I'll go over right after this. But Forbidal is really good. It is like a really good card to get in your piece, because we don't know Forbidal when you play it, you can choose to call 2 grade 3 or 4 spoilers. We're not playing grade 4s in this deck, so you choose 2 grade 3 units and you call them onto the board. So this can help you dig for Shadow Cloaks. Obviously that Shadow Cloak, not Shadow Cloak, RPD. Obviously the RPD cannot get the crit or the power of that turn because you called it from the deck, but you do set up for next turn, so it's really good. And then you can also call out Zorga Mask with it, which you can bounce back with the Shadow Cloak to actually get a copy of Zorga Mask in your hand. And then you can also call out a blue Zorga just on the board as an attacker, and then when you die or you call over yourself, you can banish it for the Zorga Mask effect. So yeah, so that's really good there. Drive check order. I think this is the worst order in the deck. If there was something I take out immediately, it would be this. If you don't know what its skill is, you can, when you play it, you discard an order from your hand to give your Vanguard draft +1. Sometimes you just don't have the cost to pay for this. So yeah, but we're mainly playing this because it is an order that does not require CB. That is different name from everything else here. It doesn't cost CB, it doesn't cost soul. It does cost an order discard, which kind of sucks. Sometimes you just don't have it. But yeah, that's only just the 1 of. We're playing 1 of the Resentment, so skill Soul Blast 1. Check top 3, choose a card from among them, mill it out, and then call anything from your drop zone that's grade equal to or less than your Vanguard. This card should be a Misty Arc Habitat, but in English, or at least at the time of Toronto BCS, we did not have that card available to us, so that's why we're on this instead. And if you're wondering, I actually did find this list on Twitter. I basically copied the list card for card. I played around with some other stuff. This card list, The order here was the Misty Arc Habitat, but obviously we don't have it, so this was in my opinion the next best replacement. It fulfilled a very similar role in being able to thin the deck out as well as call a card. So yeah, this card, the reason why this card is worse than Misty Arc Habitat is because it costs a soul. This deck is very soul heavy because you want to be using Shadow Cloak almost every single turn, and this costs a soul. Misty Arc Habitat does not cost a soul. I personally think rezzing is better than check top 7 calling from deck, because at some point you're going to thin out all the cards you actually want out of your deck already, so your deck's just going to be a bunch of triggers and orders you don't really care about calling out. So yeah, but this thing having a Soul Blast cost is actually very detrimental to this deck, but that's what's just a one-of. Next, Tearful Malice, again, also just a one-of, really nice. Sack 2 units off to CC 1, put it into Soul, or if you're optimizing this from drop, whatever order you play from hand into Soul, to draw 1. So this is really good because this is one card clear off your RPDs, because I don't know how Alchemagical RPD works. If you sack them off for cost, so basically this card, the RPDs you sacked off for cost that are on the board do actually see the activation of the order, because the ruling is like, if you stack them off for cost, you pay the cost and then the order is played, so they see the activation of it. So yeah, very strong, very good one of, just because it helps you get RPGs off the board and it CCs. And then finally, the Overcoming the Unnatural Death. This card skill is CB. You pay the cost of CB1, and then when you play it, you choose it binds itself, and then you choose 2 orders from your drop and add them back to your hand. So obviously you can add these orders back, but the main reason why this card is in the deck is because we're also playing 3 of this Blitz order that we can add back to our hand. So this Blitz order also costs a soul, so that's where even more of your soul is going. This and Shadow Cloak. So this card's skill is soul. You pay the cost of Soul Blast 1, you draw 1, so you break even on play, so you don't actually lose advantage off playing this. And then for that battle, your Vanguard gets 5k power for every different named order in your drop and your bind. So in an optimal scenario, your Van will be getting like 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, because it does count. It can count itself if you have the copy itself. So in an optimal scenario, you can get plus 40k shield, which is obviously really big. That's for, in most cases, just a PG against most attacks. So that's really good there. But even obviously you won't always have like optimal scenario where you have all 4, but on average you are hitting like 25 to 30 shield with this in like the mid to late games, and I think that's more than good enough, because like 25 shields puts you at 38, which is already pretty good, and another 15 will put you up to 53. I think that's more or less enough to guard everything. So yeah, this Blitz order package in my opinion is very strong. This mainly being the package because obviously if you don't play like this stuff, you can just play like more other orders and other stuff in the deck. So yeah, Blitz order package, very good. I think this is actually one of the reasons I play this deck, because if you're not killing the opponent very fast, you kind of need some way to actually survive, and this lets you survive. Because I guess we'll go over it now. Obviously you'll see the only thing left that I've been showing you are the triggers. The cards I'm not playing in this deck are the Ox and the Keel. I'll just quickly grab them out, I guess. But yeah, we are not playing this card, and we're not playing any of this card. So the main reason why, in my opinion, why I'm not playing these is because I don't think Keel is a particularly good card. I actually think Keel is a very bad card for this deck. I think Keel is actual bait for Zorga. And as a result, since you don't play Keel, you don't need to play the Ox. I think Ox itself is actually a pretty good card. Beyond the CB1, Soul Blast 1, and grab an order from drop. CB is not the biggest issue with this deck for the most part, so that's fine. And with the soul cost, if you just loop Malice, you're getting that soul back every single turn. So the cost on the Ox is fine. I actually think Ox is a pretty good card. It's a card that I personally would not mind trying to find space for. However, I think just having a heavier order lineup is better than having a card that did pay cost for grabbing an order back. So that's where I'm on that. Trade-off is a body, so it's a booster. That's also really nice. But the reason I think Keel is bad is because the way I like playing this deck is you play a very defensive-oriented game plan where you just swing 3 times with Van threatening triggers. Obviously, because often you have to opponent at 4, and then your Van is swaying. Obviously, even with just Twin Drive, you're still threatening potential crit lethal. And then you have 2 RPDs on the side that also have crits. So Your opponent's basically stuck in a dilemma where if they have no CB left at 4, they basically have to think to themselves, do I just risk taking this Van Swing and risk them flipping a crit for game, or do I just guard the Van and then have 2 RPD swing all for crit as well? That's choking my CB out. So when one of my friends brought this up with me, this deck is kind of very reminiscent to Zero Damage Luard, kind of. So that's probably why I gravitated towards this deck, kind of, because like you're playing like a very crit choke heavy game style while also having cards that let you loop defensives really well. So yeah, kind of like how Zero Damage Luard played in Zero. So yeah, that's probably why I played it, and because of that's how the place I want to play the deck. Keel offers absolutely nothing to that game plan, because Keel calls itself out. Yeah, it's a 4th attack, but even on Persona Ride turn, it swings for what, 30 on a Dragon Stream marker without anything else. So this deck is not much of miasma, so couldn't count for that as well. But like 5k, 10k on the marker, 20 from Zorga Mask, 30 off of Persona Ride. Let's say you had miasma as well, 35. 35 is still like relatively easy to guard for the most part, and it does cost a CB. I think the best thing this card does is build a stacking of your RPG, so your opponent can't bot deck them, you can't spin them or anything like that. Only real matchup for that matters in my opinion is Jet, because that's the only common one that can get rid of RPDs in such ways. So yeah, so basically the TLDRs, I don't think the 4th attack is worth playing at all, and as such the Ox does not make the cut, because since you don't need Dragon Tree markers for the Keel, there's no real reason to play the Ox with it, even though I think the Ox is a okay card. So that's it for the orders, and then finally the triggers. Nothing, pretty standard, I'd say. We were playing Red OT. Red OT over Stoy OT or Blue OT. Blue OT I don't really does too much. Yeah, it's like a 9th crit. I think Blue OT is fine as well. But if I were to not play Red OT, I'd probably play Stoy OT, just like Stoy OT is also pretty good. It is also a 9th crit, but also heals and draws and front. So yeah, I think in the context of Stoy OT is probably better than Blue OT. But we're playing Red OT because Red OT synergizes really well with an RPD, because if you if you drive check the Red OT and you give the effect of the RPD can swing for like 100 million 2 crit twice, and obviously that's basically asking your opponent for 2 PGs, or there are 4 or more. So yeah, I think very good for this deck specifically. We are playing 4 vanilla heals. I personally do not think effect heals are too good. In my opinion, I really dislike the lack of early guard with the effect heals. I think it's all preference. I think if you want to gear towards specific matchups, like you want to deal with Gandiva better, you can play crit heals. You want to play against Willista better, you can play the restand heals. But in my opinion, because the meta is so like all over the place with what deck is like, with what heals are getting against what, I think it's kind of hard to justify a certain heal over the other, and at that point just becomes a headache, and then you can lower shield value, like I said earlier, or in the early game. So that's why I personally just played the 4 vanilla heals, just keep it simple. If I were to play a effect heal, I'd probably play the crit one, just because against Willista, the 25 against the Ophelia, when it on a Persona turn, the Ophelia on the reset already hits for 38, so it's already a 2-card guard, so doesn't really have too much against that. But at least against something like Gandiva, maybe the Mirror, maybe whatever other crit decks have a crit on them, the 25 from the crit heal might actually come in handy. But yeah, I personally still wouldn't change it even if I had a chance to go back. I personally would still stick with for vanilla heals, but again, if you like preference, if you like effect heals, go by all means. Yeah. Next, we're playing 8 crits, 4 vanilla, 4 effect crits. Effect crits actually matter in this deck. This is a deck where I actually think you do need to play effect crits, because like I said earlier, this deck does burn through soul a lot, and sometimes you will res a crit back just as a booster behind like an RPD makes 44, which is good enough for the most part. 39, 44, still hitting for magic numbers, and then you slide into soul. 2k, the 2k does not matter at all whatsoever, but the 1 extra soul does. So I think effect crit actually does matter. The vanilla crit, whatever art you want. And then finally, playing 3 fronts. This deck goes through deck pretty fast. This deck is also playing much no shields, so extra shield value is always very nice. You can obviously bounce these back with Shadow Cloak and all that. So front's very, very good. And obviously, if you flip a front, and you're at 4, you make your RPDs bigger and harder to guard. So yeah, I think this is the best trigger line for this deck. I think draws are very unnecessary in this deck, even though I do like draws a lot. I think fronts are much, much better than something like Zorga. I've even thought about playing 4 fronts 7 crit, but with that mentality being that if I expect my opponent to guard my Zorga swing at 4, I want to flip a front instead of a crit, because the RPD columns are already have a crit, so you don't need extra crit. But the front means both get bigger, so it's harder to guard. But at the same time, if they don't guard, right, you want the extra crit in the deck so you can actually flip the crit. Actually, it's flipping a crit, so yeah, that's why I personally went with this. And also early on, they're not at 4, they're at 3. They're more inclined to, like, or 2 or 3, they're more inclined to actually take the van swing, because the Zorga column is always, although the Zorga column is usually the biggest and like the hardest to guard just because of the bigger number, it is on average the least threatening column, because of the fact that your rears are crit, but your van just swing for vanilla. Only time your van might actually be threatening is when you give a triple drive with the yellow orders. Yeah. So that's it for the actual deck profile of this deck. And I guess we'll go over the matchups I played. I had the matchups up on Twitter, so if you want to just take a look at that, you can. But we can go a little more in depth on the actual games. I just kind of listed them out on Twitter without actually explaining what happened on my games. So I'll just quickly go over that. I guess I'll just lay. I'll just have it out so I can read it off on the side. So yeah, so my I guess we're gonna start from the very beginning of the shop challenges. I actually did go to 2 shop challenges this season. The first one I went to, I ended up getting 3rd, although I don't know why I was 3rd, even though my only loss was in the final match to the guy who actually got the buy card. So I was basically 1 win off of a buy card, but I won my round 1 anyway, so it didn't really matter in my opinion. It didn't really matter. So yeah, sucks there. And then in the second one, I ended up I think I just went 0-2. I got really unlucky. If you didn't know, I played Gandiva for both of those actually, so I actually did have the option to play Gandiva if I wanted to. But and then I just kind of decided I'm just gonna play Zorga instead. I guess I'll go over that too before we go over the matchups. Why did I bring Zorga over something else? So I guess I'll just quickly bring up the decks that actually did have the options to play. Let me actually get those decks out. So obviously I played Gandiva in the shop challenges, so obviously I had the option to play Gandiva. Yeah, so obviously I had the option to play Gandiva, but I personally, in like testing and stuff, and like in that second shop challenge, obviously did pretty well for me in the first shop challenge, because I went, I went X1 because there wasn't a top cut or anything for that one. So I didn't play this deck just because I didn't feel comfortable on it. Like obviously this deck is brain dead, autopilot, retire stuff, buy and draw, blah blah blah. Yeah, I think when the deck goes well, it goes really well, but there was a few issues I have with this deck. Is that one, going first, if you can't hit 5 binds, the deck feels super underwhelming. Like yeah, your numbers are kind of big, but like nothing's threatening at all. You can't multi-attack with alpha cards locked behind opponent beyond grade 3. The deck is very bad early game, even if you play Brachio, which in my opinion I think Brachio is a pretty bad card actually, but that's neither here nor there. I think this deck has a very poor early game, which I think is actually a really bad thing to have in this current metagame, because in my opinion the best deck is Ballista, which I don't have, so it wasn't even an option for me. The deck was too expensive, I didn't want to buy it. But I think not having a good early game to contest Ballista was really bad, so that's why I did not want to play Gandiva. In the test games I did play in that matchup, if they open like Romanias and columns to hit you with, and you just don't open like something to contest back, it just feels really bad, because you need to save in this. You need to save like all your pieces for your grade 3 turn. A vast majority of cards don't work until you ride up to Gandiva. Stuff like Rugen doesn't work, and they play a bunch of 3s and stuff as well. So early game just felt really, basically early game felt really bad. It felt too piece reliant to me, in my opinion, at least in the early game. There was just too much stuff, in my opinion, that could go wrong for my personal liking. Obviously Zorga is a very piece reliant deck too, but I think I just did not feel comfortable playing Gandiva. So Gandiva was like the 3rd choice on terms of decks I want to play. And then the last choice that I was considering playing, the second choice was Jet. So Jet was the other option. Basically, Jet is, to me, I think Jet is still a really strong deck, even post restriction. Jet, it is, if you open your pieces and you just open grade 1s, you get to go second, you just swing, you just hit them in the face a bunch of times early game. very, very strong early game, so that's one of the main reasons I want to play it. I think next stage is still one of the best finishers in standard because triple drive van into guard restrict twin drive van I think is still very, very potent. Even from 3 it's still very threatening. Obviously if you do something like flip blue OT, not OT, dark states OT in this deck, your van resent even more threatening. Early game is obviously really good. I think the Crucial Dragon is really good in this deck because it gives you something to do on that turn 3 point. Aggro's you tries to aggro going first. Pretty good draw power, pretty good deck thinning. Upstream lets you nut deck out too in matchups where that matters. So yeah, I think Jet was also a really good pick. Jet was personally my second pick for the game for what I want to bring. So basically, my order was like Zorga, Jet, Gandiva, and obviously ended up bringing Zorga. So and it worked out. So definitely not unhappy with my choices or anything, but I just did want to bring up like what my other choices were and what else I might have wanted to bring. So yeah, so that's it for that. But yeah, these were my other choices. But in the end, brought Zorga. So my matchups, round 1 was against Magnolia Elder. My opponent definitely felt like they were either very casual or very new to the game. Their list was, from at least what I could tell, it was fine. They had the essentials in it, had like elders and had the inlets. Deck was fine, but a Meg Elder is kind of a not so good deck at the moment. I think it's pretty bad. I have the deck too. I don't play it for a reason because I don't think it's very good. And they definitely felt like they didn't play the game too often because on one of the turns they forgot to use the inlets and passed their turn, and they only realized after they passed that they didn't use the inlets. And obviously in the competitive setting, I'm not gonna let them take that back. I'm not gonna let them use it. So yeah, you can call that V-Sport, you can call that being BM or whatever. But yeah, competitive setting, I'm not letting you take something just like that back. So there goes that game. Round 2, I'm playing against Bav. My opponent bricked really, really, really badly, and I flipped defensive OT on my first grade 3 turn with the RPD. So yeah, not much to say there. They went first, but they opened no spear for the entire game. On my first grade 3 turn, I think I opened like double RPD. I basically opened as well as you could, except for the fact that I couldn't get to Zorga Mask. But it didn't matter because I flipped red OT on a RPD with a crit. They PG'd all of it, but on the next turn they still didn't get the spear. So they basically did nothing for the next turn, and the next turn I just killed them. So yeah, not much to say about that. Just kind of those games where opponent bricks and you open the nuts and you just kind of went from there. Round 3 was Tamayura. This was a matchup where my opponent, I felt, just didn't know too well, or it definitely felt like a matchup check where they just didn't know what the correct thing to do was. So they have Tamayura has one of the cute dolls that Soul Blast 2 to put on your opponent's rears into Soul. So they were putting my RPDs into Soul, which is correct. Until I showed them the Blitz order. I think the first time it's fine because you see a board like this. Obviously you put this in the Soul. It makes it harder for them to for the Zorga player to get it back out. But once he did that on my turn, I Blitz ordered the RPD out as my cost, so I could keep it back into my drop. But on the next turn, even though RPD is back out, he still decided to put it into my Soul after seeing me add a copy of the Blitz order back to my hand. So I think the Soul for them could have been used better elsewhere, either just drawing weapon. I did tell them to get them after the game. So yeah, I definitely felt like a matchup check of sorts. And I think they missed Persona Ride for a turn too, so numbers are very unthreatening. So yeah, so there goes that one. Next off, against Hexa Orb. I actually misplayed this game, but I still won because I hit defensive OT. So never punished, I guess. The misplay in this game was I mismanaged my CB for a turn, where I used Blue Zorga to res a card when I didn't need to, because I didn't really think about what I was going on to Alchemagic with. So I ended up like having like a cluttered board, and then I CB to call something with the Blue Zorga, and then Alchemagic ended up having overcall something anyway. So that CB actually mattered because on the turn afterwards I didn't have the CB to Alchemagic because I think I had Miasma in hand. I think the only thing left in my drop to Alchemagic with was another Miasma. So I didn't have the CB for that, so I played Vanilla for a turn. They did Persona Ride, and I was very much dead on that turn. But my very first damage was defensive OT, and they already guarded with their OT, so the turn just ended there. They didn't have any guards left for my follow-up, so they just scooped up on the meaty defensive OT check. So yeah, I misplayed but never punished. OT, very powerful card. And then round 5, I played against Jet. Jet was actually the matchup I was most spooked by on Zorga, because Jet is the deck that can spin your RPDs. And they have the Jet guard restrict. And since I'm not playing Elementaria, I'm just playing a the Blitz order here. I wasn't playing Elementaria, so I didn't have like a freebie against the Jet guard restrict. I actually have to hard guard the Jet every time I wanted to actually guard it. So I was actually a little spooked about it. In theory, that was probably my worst matchup, but I ended up beating 2 Jets, so I guess it didn't matter. I guess clearly it was a fine matchup, but I think in this game I just ended up choking out the Jet player at 4 for the entire game. I think they burnt through all their CB, and they never healed down, and they kept guarding my van. So this is the kind of situation where it's like where it's like a board like this, right? Where like you swing with the van when you're at 4, and obviously you're gonna feel threatened to guard the swing, because if you don't guard this and I flip a crit, you just die. But if you guard this swing and then I swing with these, you have to guard these as well, because these also have a crit on them. So they basically got choked out the entire game. I don't remember this was my round. I think this was the game where even though they could have the option to stay on Jet to just hit me with a guard restrict, they kept striding anyways, and I think that was actually really wrong, because obviously they didn't know my exact list or anything, obviously, but I think Jet swing with a guard restrict is more threatening than a triple drive that I'm allowed to PG, because Shadow Cloak lets you loop your PGs back every single turn. So yeah, I think they personally played the matchup a little bit wrong. I don't think guarding the van is wrong in any particular way, but I do think striding just for the triple drive, in my opinion, was wrong, because striding for triple drive basically made it so all my guards were easier than if they stayed on Jet to actually guard restrict me. So yeah, I basically won by choking them out for the entire game, and then at some point they just could not guard these giant columns anymore, and they just died. So yeah, that's it for that. Round 6 was Gandiva. This was my first loss. Not much to say. I just didn't draw enough stuff to guard their attacks. I think they went first, and then they just hit 5 bind. They swung. I think I was like PG the van, and then next turn they Persona Ride. I had Alpha card. I just died because I couldn't have it. Didn't have the chance to stabilize. Didn't have a chance to play my stally game plan. So yeah, yeah, there's that. Round 7, I played against Youth. Very good player. I think this was probably the highlight for me. I think this was probably the match. This was probably the match I enjoyed the most. Very back and forth. I don't remember anything too particularly special happening in this match, but I definitely enjoyed playing against my opponent. I talked with him a lot afterwards too, because I found his list very interesting. His youth list was at least this ride line was very different. I think he was on Grey 1 Maple into Blaster Blade. So yeah, very interesting list, a very good opponent. I quite enjoyed the match, but I did end up winning in the end. I think it actually did come down to like a single trigger of him not flipping a crit, I think. And then I think I ended up winning because I did flip a crit. So yeah, basically came down to a trigger. So there's that. And then round 8, I played against Jet. Basically the same thing as my round 6. I basically just tried to choke them out at 4. This was a little more close, because at some point I was given the option to 2-pass. I did not flip it, and on the next turn I basically won the game because he no guarded at 4, and I did flip the crit I needed for lethal, and I was very much dead if they hit the heal or an OT, because their entire deck at that point basically just triggers. So it was very scary. I was very much down next turn if they didn't kill, but I flipped the crit I needed, and that was the last round for Swiss. Another tangent on that, I think it was very stupid that we were forced to play 8 rounds anyways. Even though by round 8 there was only 1 undefeated left and a bunch of X1s, but at the end of the day they still made us play out that last round, where I personally see no reason. And top 8 ended up being I think it was 1XO. The 1XO, because I think the XO won his match. It was my round 6 Gandiva opponent, so I think he won his match. He's 8XO, and then it was 5 X1s and 2 X2s bubbled in. So I did not personally see the point of that last match, but I guess they must play, so he played it. So top 8, I played against my first Lista of the day. This match at first looked very unwinnable for me. My hand was something like 3 PGs, like some triggers. I think I opened like no Shadow Cloaks, no RPDs, like very minimal amounts of orders as well. So I had absolutely no offensive pressure for basically in the entire early game. But by turn 3, I basically saw that I was probably not killing my opponent through normal means. I think I drew my OT as well, so like I was just like, yeah, I'm not actually gonna kill him. So by turn 3, I basically decided I'm going to slow this game down and just try to deck him out. And that's exactly how I went. I saw by turn 3 that his hand was huge. There was no way I was killing him. I was playing no pressure this turn, so I just played the game as slow as I could. On the my very first grade 3 turn, I think he healed down from 1 to 0. So I just swung at his rears, not giving any CB, so couldn't restand. So the tech cards were more manageable. I did have a bunch of PGs in my hand. At some point, I did manage to stabilize. I drew my Shadow Cloaks and all that. So I slowly gave them damage. Obviously, what Willista needs, if Willista wants to do anything, it needs to go through its deck. It needs to draw with the gem. If any Elvirs or draw the extra cards. If he wants to Soul Blast with the Willista, like he can also take cards out like that. So I think my opponent just did not see his lose condition of deck out. So he actually went through his deck quite aggressively. At some point, he had like 3 Elvirs on the board. He was still calling stuff out with the Willista. And yeah, so I managed to stabilize. And then I slowly decked him out. There was basically at one point I saw that I was guaranteed to win, but there was still like an extra turn or two I had to play out because he still swing with rears and all that. But yeah, this was one game where I genuinely felt like I outplayed my opponent, or rather my opponent did not see their lose condition. So yeah, and I think I also looped PG to the point where I think I PG'd him like 7 times. I definitely remember there was a turn where I just 4 where I only left him with 1 open CB. Or I think it was either that or he just couldn't play the gem out. I ended up just going like PG, or I just PG'd 4 times and I ended up looping like 2 more back on the next turn. So yeah, this was definitely a game where I felt like I genuinely outplayed my opponent. Top 4 matchup against MLB. This matchup, in my opinion, is just horrendous for MLB. MLB is a crit check deck where their Van has crit, Van has triple drive sometimes. My opponent actually did not find Blast or Dark the entire game, so it was just twin drive. But yeah, the matchup was basically just, do you see PGs? I saw my PGs. I would loot back my PGs, so I was never in any danger of dying. And we just slowly grinded the game out. He showed me he guarded with an OT at some point too, so the only real thing I was scared of at that point was out of his deck as well. So yeah, the instant he showed me the OT, I was like, cool, I basically won this game. And yeah, this was probably one of the easiest games I've had. Nothing, not throwing shade on my opponent or anything, but this was just a bad matchup. This was just a matchup where I think is very favorable for a deck like mine. And finally, in the finals, I played against Gandiva again. So both my losses were actually to Gandiva. Even though I don't think Gandiva is a particularly good deck or anything, or I think it's a very overrated deck. I didn't play it myself, but yeah. My 2 losses were to Gandiva. So basically, in this game, I just ended up not opening that well, and I flipped an OT at a horrendous time. It was my first grade 3 turn where I couldn't set up RPDs with the crit, and I flipped the OT, and I'm like, cool, okay, this is 2 damage. But on both swings, my opponent healed. So he was at 3. I flipped the OT. I think they took the van swing to 3. 100 million heal, 100 million heal. I'm like, oh well, fuck me. I guess my OT did absolutely nothing here. He did Gandiva things for a turn. I live. Next turn, I think I like managed to slowly unbrick, but I didn't have enough to kill. And then the next turn, I just didn't have PGs and I lost. So yeah. Finals, I kind of bricked a little bit in the finals because I didn't open early RPDs. My opponent healed twice there. I think he healed down on the turn after that as well. So yeah, not much you can do. Gandiva did Gandiva things. Gandiva healed 3 times. I flipped a very badly timed OT as well. But yeah, not much you can do against bad RNG, I guess. I actually think this deck is very favorable against Gandiva, or relatively favorable against Gandiva, but you know, kind of need things to go right for that to happen. I think once this deck gets a stabilized, like a turn or 2, this deck actually does play really well against Diva, or you just open really well and just aggro them really hard as well. But that did not happen against my Gandiva opponents. My Gandiva opened very well and flipped a good amount of triggers. So yeah, not much you can do against that. So I guess that's it. Not much else. I think I more or less talked about everything. I went over the deck. I went over decks I would have played. I went over my matchups and all that, and my deck choices. So yeah, so I think this audio video is quite long, approaching 40 minutes. So I think we will call it there. Thank you guys for watching. And I will see you guys next time. Peace out.